How's it going, Giants fans? Welcome to Fireside Giants. Me, Alex, co-host Anthony, and today we're discussing Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton, receiver, obviously kind of on the fringe of the roster. Some might even say he's on the bubble, mainly because of his salary cap hit this year. So I kind of want to discuss the justification for him being on the roster. Is it worth keeping him for the final year of his rookie deal? Is it worth keeping him with Daniel Jones, who probably will benefit the most from having him just based on chemistry? But I do want to discuss how much the team would save by cutting him and just kind of overall what he brings to this team. I think that he could go either way. There's an argument to be made on both sides of it. So I kind of want to discuss that with you, Anthony, my friend. But before we do, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I think Darius Slayton is a curious case here because I think he's a player that has overperformed, exceeded all expectations. You got to keep in mind in 2019, he was a fifth-round draft pick. Nobody expected him to be a solid starter for the Giants, and I know you could debate whether or not he's been solid, but as a rookie, he definitely was solid. Him and Daniel Jones had a very good connection, and I feel like the chemistry's always been there between the two of them. But as Daniel Jones has struggled, so has Darius Slayton. And there's been a lot of confounding variables that have caused Daniel Jones to struggle. And those have actually caused Darius Slayton to struggle at times as well. So I think it's a curious case where you had a player who looked way more talented than you initially expected. But then the hype just kind of raised pretty high for him. The expectations met his performance level. And then he kind of just faltered, went back to being that kind of fifth round player, and he didn't really have the development that people were hoping for. But if you are going to move on from Darius Slayton, I think now's the time. You don't really want to wait till next year, let him walk away in free agency. He's not going to get that large of a contract where you get a compensatory pick for him in the future. If you want to get some compensation for Darius Slayton, you got to do it this summer. The Giants would have to trade him now before his rookie deal expires after next season. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do. And I think all eyes are going to be on Darius Slayton and the other receivers competing alongside him during training camp. And I think that's ultimately what will determine whether or not Darius Slayton is on the New York Giants in 2022.
Yeah, I saw an interesting trade from Mike Clay, I believe, of ESPN a couple days ago that had the Miami Dolphins trading Myles Gaskin for Darius Slayton. Both are about to make the same amount of money. Gaskin, a little bit more productive, obviously a running back. They have a lot of running back depth over there with Salvin Ahmed and a couple other guys. I think that they have, who else? They got a bunch. They have Sony Michel now. They have some other dudes too, Raheem Mostert, I believe. So some interesting guys, definitely. Maybe Myles Gaskin would be a upgrade. I know you have Matt Breida, but Gaskin's a little bit younger. Maybe a nice little long-term option and scat back to pair with Saquon this upcoming season. But that's obviously a theoretical trade. Darius Slayton is currently on the Giants roster. So looking at how much he's going to earn this year, Darius Slayton is set to earn $2.6 million. Now, if they cut him, they would save $2.54 million, and they only have $6 million in available salary space right now. So you're talking about having around $8.5 million going into the season, which is a nice chunk of change. After letting John Ross go due to injury and just him not kind of working out as much as we'd hope. Darius Slayton being a lot more of a reliable receiver, but again, he's on the field, but he is still dropping passes. His drop rate has gotten significantly worse every single season. 2019 started at 5.9%, then went to 10.7% in 2020, and then 18.8% last year. Dropped 6 passes, 6 in 2020 as well. But his yardage also dropped significantly to 339 yards. So he dropped just as many passes in 2020 in half the amount of receptions. And half the amount of targets. So that's not a good thing. We all remember the one he dropped against Washington that would have won the game for the Giants. It was that one that bombed downfield from Daniel Jones went right through his hands. You got to catch that. But at this point in time, I'll tell you what, I don't think that the Giants should release or cut or trade Darius Slayton because I think that he's probably the only guy that Daniel Jones has legitimate chemistry with, right? Saquon Barkley's been injured the majority of Daniel Jones' career. Kenny Golladay was not properly schemed last year. The offensive line was so bad. There was not even legitimate chemistry to be had between DJ and Kenny Golladay. I think him and Slayton are the only guys that really stand out as the ones that make sense to kind of be together. And DJ, both drafted in 2019. I think that let them ride it out. Let Slayton ride out the rest of his rookie deal. He has one more season left. And then you got DJ. They've already rejected his 5th-year option. So this is his final year on his rookie deal as well. So, I think that you let him keep his most reliable target over the years. Yes, I know Darius Slayton drops the ball a lot. But like, who are you going to replace him with? He's your lone 9 route runner. He's your guy that can get downfield. He blows the top off of the defenses. He's the fastest guy on that offense that can, just in terms of straightaway speed. You're not going to replace him unless you go out and like re-sign John Ross or something. I think that asset in terms of speed is dangerous. Even when he's not being targeted, it keeps the defenses honest downfield. So I think that's like the main reason I don't think he should be traded. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the chemistry with Daniel Jones is a super important factor when discussing Darius Slayton. As I mentioned, in 2019, Daniel Jones' rookie season, those two did have a very serious connection and they played together very well. And if you take a look at the stats, that was definitely Darius Slayton's most productive season. 8 touchdowns, 8 receiving touchdowns as a rookie 5th round pick. That is a super impressive number. And that's why the expectations grew for him like they did in year 2. 2020, people were saying, Darius Slayton, will he establish himself as a true number 2 receiver? Could he even push himself to be a number 1? Well, now we're talking about him as number 4 or 5 receiver, which I guess was a more realistic projection for a 5th round pick, coming out of college. But you take a look at him, he really looked like that good of a receiver in his rookie season. 8 receiving touchdowns is a big number. If I'm not mistaken, that's the same number that Sterling Shepard put up in his rookie season, 8 touchdowns. So again, very impressive number there. Those two have a great connection and they play together really well. But I think the problem is you just take a look at how the Giants offense in general has deteriorated over the past few years. The implementation of Jason Garrett's offensive scheme, it took Daniel Jones back like half a mile, and it took Darius Slayton back like a full mile. There was just a lot of bad coaching decisions and a lot of front office decisions that held the Giants back and caused some of these players to regress significantly. Because in 2019, you're talking about 14 games, 9 starts, 84 targets, 740 yards, and 8 touchdowns from a rookie 5th-round pick in Darius Slayton. Then you have Jason Garrett come in, and he's healthier this year. He starts in an extra 6 games, but he only gets 12 more targets, only 2 more receptions, and only 11 more receiving yards with 5 less touchdowns. Everyone just stopped scoring touchdowns, became allergic to scoring touchdowns once Jason Garrett got to town. And I think that's something to definitely keep in mind when you're having this discussion. Darius Slayton, one time with Pat Shurmur's offense, looked like a very good receiver, someone with a lot of potential who could turn into a potential number 1 guy. And then Jason Garrett came in, and that's really where things went downhill. He really held Darius Slayton back. Darius Slayton regressed significantly. You could say Daniel Jones also regressed significantly from where he was as a rookie. The last 2 years, 2020 and 21, with Jason Garrett did a lot of damage to the Giants. And I think when you really take a look at it, that's what it boils down to. Darius Slayton is just another case of squandered potential, squandered opportunity, because I do think there was a good player there. I just think bad coaching kind of sidetracked him. Now it's up to the Giants to say, do we want to put him back in there, try and help him reach that potential with a good coaching staff featuring Brian Dable or Mike Kafka, or do we want to sell him while we still can, trade him away while we still can, and just hope that one of these other guys on the roster steps up?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough decision, but I think ultimately it's probably fair to assume that they'll keep him. I mean, Brian Dable said some pretty good things about him thus far, saying he's been pretty reliable in training camp. He's a leader on that team now. He's been there for a couple of years. And I think his chemistry with Daniel Jones is undeniable. Yes, DJ kind of overthrows him a little bit sometimes. Yes, Darius Slayton drops the passes that he should be catching. But we've also seen him come up in some big moments. We've seen him make some big throws. He's the only guy. He had 2 touchdowns last year, right? Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney, neither of them had touchdowns last year. Andrew Thomas had more touchdowns than these guys. So you know what I'm talking about. You have to consider the fact that Darius Slayton is like one of the only guys that actually managed to get into the end zone. And that is a valuable metric when you're talking about a Giants offense that is malnourished in the category. So I'd love to hear your opinions below. As always, my friends, on Darius Slayton, do you think he should be cut or kept? Personally, I think it should be kept just based on the chemistry variable that I mentioned before, and Anthony also touched on. But as always, much love. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.